Oosh, Waitangi Day at Waitangi 2026. Brother, been in the limelight and no introductions required as, you know, your podcast man with all your side quests and everything that's going on, bro. But yeah, just thank you for creating the time to be able to come in and kōrero while we're here. And obviously there's been a lot of things happening over these past few months in the political climate that we're in, alongside being a part of too now and all the things that are happening in your personal life.
Yeah.
And just how much you get pulled in many different directions as you're walking around here amongst your people. So, mihana kia koe, bro. How are you feeling at this time, brother?
Yeah, pai, bro. Beautiful proceedings this morning with our karakia huakirangi. And so it's, always, I think, the best way to kind of charge the wairua, stepping into the practices of our tūpuna and like connecting with them, and then also aspiring, I guess, for today, this auspicious day, important day, particularly for Ngapuhi in terms of the first signing of Te Tiriti o Waitangi, and then like thinking about the future as well. So I'm feeling good, bro, feeling energized, and so far so good.
It's a mean way to start the day, because last year when I was up here, but I was like, could not wake up, so I missed that karakia. I actually got people walking in when I woke up, so to actually get the full I guess huakirangi te atane, bro, it was mean, and the light was just about to come through, but it was just beautiful to see te whakaminenga there, and you know, all of the karakia and kai karanga just doing their thing. So that was a real special way to anchor into the specialness of what today is. And you know, there's a few things that come to mind when I think about Waitangi. There's the remembrance, and there's also the whakanui, which is like, man, it was cool that it was great that our tipuna even got to that space of thinking along those lines. But then there's also the remembrance of all of the mamai that came from it as well. So is it a time to celebrate, bro, or is it a time to how do we actually go about Waitangi on Waitangi Day?
Yeah, bro, hard out. I think it's not necessarily a cause for celebration today, but we're aspiring to get to a point where we can actually genuinely celebrate Te Tiriti o Waitangi. Why? Because it's actually being honoured, because there's actually justice for our rights, for our whenua, our language, everything that makes us who we are as tangata whenua. If we get to that reality, if that's actually like real world living for us, then for sure we can definitely celebrate Te Tiriti o Waitangi. But right now, we're inching towards that reality, but we're not there yet. So I think we're still in a stage of remembering, as you say, relearning the histories, because a lot of the histories of Te Tiriti o Waitangi that have been force-fed to us really have warped our whakaaro and the truth of Te Tiriti o Waitangi. So in relearning, re-educating ourselves on the true history and whakapapa, that's a part of that remembering. And it's not just remembering, I guess, for the sake of like kind of just being academic. It's actually remembering to give us strength and power, because in that truth, I think kei reira te mana, kei reira te kaha. So it's like finding that strength and power in our truth again, normalizing that in our hearts and our minds, and then letting that really energize and push us towards this world that I've just talked about, in terms of we're actually living our Te Tiriti o Waitangi, not just remembering it.
Yeah, because that's probably the biggest part about it all, is the honouring aspect of the relationship between tauiwi or te Pākehā and Māori, where it's been heavily one-sided. And so that's the tohe, or that's perhaps the challenge within why we can't fully celebrate it, because it's not being honoured correctly. Right. And so when we think about, we're here, and it's just beautiful settings, bro. And I was doing a bit of a kōrero to the camera up on the lookout there by the flag, and I just try and imagine like what it would have been like coming in on the waka and just seeing this whenua, bro. And then I also had the perspective of, man, imagine being Pākehā coming in at the same time and just having the same kind of, I guess, insight into the landscape, and then obviously everything transpired after that. And so do you think about that often, bro, about like, man, what it would have been like for our tipuna to actually come to the shores of Aotearoa and create life here?
Only every day, bro. Yeah, I always think about that, and just like just how they would have seen the world, how they would have thought about so many things. Like, I constantly think about that, bro. And even though I was sort of saying before that we're not necessarily celebrating Te Tiriti o Waitangi today. We are still celebrating our identity, our culture, our whakapapa, our tikanga, all of those things, like just how our tupuna thought and the fact that they came here 1,000 years ago before any other peoples in the world even knew this whenua existed. And this is the hardest place to sail to by wind in the whole world because it's in the biggest ocean in the world, and it's right at the bottom or the top, depends how you look at it.
Yeah.
And the reason our tupuna were able to travel here is because they're the best navigators to ever live. And so, yeah, I often think about how they would have stood in their Hawaii and they knew about this whenua because they heard about their tupuna Maui and the fact that he had a big fish somewhere out in the big ocean. And they planned on coming here, navigating here, and they came here and they became one with the land. And we're the products of that. And that's amazing. Like that makes, just as I'm saying this right now, it makes me feel powerful, and should make us feel powerful. So we're still celebrating that today and every day, actually, because that goes hand in hand with our marae's tangata whenua, which is what Te Tiriti o Waitangi protects really in the realm of the kind of big world that we live in.
And to even look at that further around what Te Tiriti o Waitangi is, it wasn't a document that gave dominion over all people on the whenua, actually more to allow that document to represent you govern your people, not on the whenua. Is that what the actual, I guess, basis of Te Tiriti is, bro?
100%, bro. Yeah, 100%. And to see that for what it is, and I talked about it on the whai kōrero this morning after our karakia, is to realise the importance and mana of Te Tiriti o Waitangi. You have to look at its whakapapa. You have to look at all of the moments before 1840 that made Te Tiriti o Waitangi possible, that birthed that moment, that birthed that document, which goes all the way back to what I've already talked about in terms of our tupuna arriving here about 20 generations ago and becoming one with the whenua. And Kupe and his descendants, according to our kind of histories here in Ngāpuhi, Kupe coming here and being an original navigator here to Aotearoa. He, interestingly enough, isn't Māori, sort of how we're Māori today. And so he came here, and over generations, sort of his grandchildren eventually became one with the whenua, and we're reborn into a culture and identity that we now call Māori. Right? So that history is important because people will say, oh, Māori aren't Indigenous here, Māori aren't the original people of this place because they came from Hawaii. But Māori didn't travel here from Hawaii. Hawaii people travelled here and became Māori over time. And it was the taiao, literally the land, that made us Māori, where our language was born from and our ways of life. And that mana that we have as tangata whenua, no piece of paper could give that to us, and no piece of paper could take that away. But what could take it away is if we stopped talking about it and if we forgot about that history. Right? So that's why it's important, me kōrero ie nei mea. And that kind of is a huge part of this whakapapa that I'm talking about. Pākehā arrival way later was the thing that kind of put our tupuna on notice to be like, oh, there are people out there who think differently to how we think, and they want to come here and want to make a home here. And that's actually fine. Our tupuna saw that as like an exciting opportunity actually to learn about new things, new technologies, but we're wanting to still protect their mana,
their way of life,
their language, our culture, our whenua, and our connections to the whenua, most importantly. And that led to the first pou in the ground, which was actually our declaration, our hakaputanga in 1835. And
so smart, just to even think about that, bro. Exactly, like, man, there are people coming here, but we need to establish that we are an independent people.
Exactly, right. And even though that sort of our declaration in 1835, hakaputanga didn't create our mana, as I said, but it put our mana into a language and a format that the world could understand. And that's what you say into that. That's the sign of how clever our tupuna were, because they saw that as a tool to protect what was important to us, and they used that tool using their own intelligence. And that was them that way back then having our backs today. And so, yeah, it's like humbling, when you think about the history in that sense. And then you only get to Te Tiriti in 1840, which is relatively recent, but all of those years before is what makes Te Tiriti important. And what Te Tiriti adds to the declaration is it gives rights to non-tangata whenua people to be able to live here with dignity and with honour and to be able to govern themselves, because before that they were playing up on these whenua, weren't adhering to the mana of tangata whenua. A lot of them were running away from poverty, lives of poverty, running away from jail basically, and so that Te Tiriti o Waitangi is the ultimate manakitanga that our tupuna gave to the world.
Yeah, well, when you think about the people who came on the boat, they were the ones who were in pretty rough conditions where they came from, you know, where they were in poverty, you know, they were perhaps farms or not, you know, there were so many different things there. People saw, man, this is an opportunity to get away from this and start something new, but they came with all of that hara, and that really started to affect a lot of the way of living here, and so Kororareka became like, you know, what was it, the hellhole of the Pacific? It was one of the names of what it was called because of those actions and ways of being. And so when you think about that, is there any kōrero around how our tupuna were able to, is that what they noticed and were like, oh man, we need to start figuring out that this stuff is kino and it's not actually, you know, good for us? Yeah,
definitely. It kind of worked two ways. So a lot of our tupuna were traveling all over the world in the sort of 1800s and going to places like New York, London, Aussie, and a lot of them noticed in their travels, and a lot of Pacific leaders actually in their travels around that period of time were shocked when they were seeing the poverty, homelessness for the first time in their lives. And so that tells us that the world they were living in, they grew up in, was a world where there wasn't such poverty, right?
Yeah, true.
And a lot of the settlers coming the other way, coming into Aotearoa, were bringing sort of a different ahua, a different way of thinking and being as well, which didn't
because they were
really
more
align.
In survival mode, the people coming here, whereas the whānau, well, our tupuna that were here were thriving, So you've got this clash of two different ways of behaving and being just purely from what's driving that. You know?
Yeah, exactly, bro. And it's like, if I was to sort of boil it down, how I see it was like they came from a world that valued ultimately money, right? And was driven around kind of the individual, the one person, and what he wants, basically, right? So that's that was the thing that made their world go round, and continues actually to make the world go round today.
Yeah, right.
But so money made their world go round. But what made our world go around here was mana. That was the mauri of our world. And mana is a people-born thing. It's a people bestowed and derived thing. And so we lived in a system where it wasn't the individual, it was the society, the village. Right? We thrived as a village, and all leaders had to answer to the village. And that's where the word rangatira comes from. Rangatira is a person that ranga, to weave, tira, people as a weaver of people, and a connector of people. And so that's our leadership model. And they didn't have that, right? So they came here with a completely different way of seeing the world. And of course there were clashes. But the beautiful thing was a lot of them came and they were pohara, you know, poverty, probably wearing taratara as clothes. But our tupuna still looked after them, fed them, and there are common accounts of that all over the north that I can speak to. And even right after being looked after by tangata whenua, a lot of those settlers and travellers still did dishonourable, terrible things, such as, you know, physical abuse, sexual abuse, stealing, theft, not only of kind of like resources, but whenua. And that was just sort of proving the suspicions that our tupuna kind of had, and seeing that clash of values and being like, oh, tēnei iwi he rereke. They have a different way, and so that kind of worry, suspicion grew, and their hope was that Te Tiriti o Waitangi would be a way of kind of managing and controlling and finding some sort of way to coexist here.
Because they knew that there was going to be the possibility anyway, the way it was going to be there in terms of living on the whenua together.
Yep.
But what is the state of that relationship?
Exactly.
What is going to be the state of that relationship? Is it going to be honourable? Is it going to be able to coexist? Or is it going to be the feeling of like wiping people out, or vice versa? And so when I think about that, I think about the odds around where our tipuna were relative to Pākehā at that time, and you fellas were able to figure it out, or there's kōrero around, you know, how much Māori were there to Pākehā at that time, which comes to the kōrero around your guys' kaupapa. We couldn't have ceded sovereignty because there were way more Māori than there were Pākehā at one particular time.
Yep, exactly, bro. Like at 1840, there were 80,000 to 100,000 Māori living here in Aotearoa, and only about 2,000 settlers. But most of those settlers were in Wellington, so they weren't even here in the north. Didn't even have sort of a physical presence. So, like breaking those numbers down, that's sort of 40, 50 to 1 in terms of Māori to Pākehā settler ratio. Not only that, we were still, it was the Māori economy that was feeding and housing settlers still at that time, right? They were completely reliant on our economy, on our resource, on our trade. And the dominant, well, the only language that you had to know at that time was Te Reo Māori.
Te Reo Māori.
That was the language of survival of living here. There was no point in learning English, though there were a few tupuna who went on the journey of learning English because they were interested in it. And they're like, I have a crack at that. And many of our tupuna became very proficient speakers of English and Māori, obviously, as their original language. So, but that wasn't a necessity. The reo of life here, of the whenua here, always was Te Reo Māori. And even that, bro, that's a buzzy one. I think, man, imagine like that today. Like, imagine if we only spoke Māori today, how different that would be. But that was their norm. Like, that was all they ever knew was that. And so that's why the only document that has mana is the document written in Te Reo Māori. And it makes it clear, that we maintain and protect our tino Rangatiratanga over our whenua, our land, our taonga, the things we care about, and our kāinga, where we live, but also how we live, our ways of life. And so that it's clear. And in that document, we give a right of kāwanatanga gracefully to settler people to govern themselves here, but not us. But the English draft document says the opposite. It says we gave all our mana away for free to the British Crown, which is, bro, that's porangi. That's crazy because, like, if you I try and put myself in like the state of mind that they would have had, like in terms of their tikanga, for the idea of giving your mana away to our tupuna would have been impossible. Because our mana doesn't come from a piece of paper. It comes from our tupuna, our whakapapa. And so that would have been to them like chopping off their arms and legs. That's like that just couldn't even.
It wouldn't even enter the state of mind, eh?
Never, bro. Never. So to say that they did that freely in that context, bullshit.
And it's crazy how it's still, even to this day, like looking to be misinterpreted or reinterpreted for one-sided benefits, and so it's buzzy how, this has been going for almost 200 years and, the tohe still continues, bro. And
bro.
Thinking about where we are and I guess the state we've been in over these past few years while this government has been in Parliament, it's actually been quite obvious how destructive it has been to Māori, and so
100.
Coming towards the end of this term, bro, like, there's a few things that have happened in between. But before actually we get to that, there was something that you said in your kōrero yesterday, and I think you repeated it today. And it was around kōrero, was a whakatauki. There was something along the lines of te tiro ki te rangi, and then ka te tiro ki te whenua kāriro. Like, what's that whakatauki, bro? And then we'll segue into, because that just came to me. I just wanted to bring that up as we were talking about, the past and remembering those aspects before we segue into the now.
Yeah, mean, bro. No, I'm glad you brought that up because it perfect tononga to our karakia this morning.
Yeah.
So the kind of, I don't know, it's sort of the political side of the spiritual practices that we practiced this morning. Quite uniquely, I guess, all of the karakia this morning in terms of our huakirangi proceeding were karakia to atua Māori. And that's different to the kind of more mainstream karakia that they have up the hill, which is kind of all religions welcome there, but you actually don't really hear any karakia Māori, if any, which has always been a disappointing thing for me, because I don't want to speak badly on people who believe in the Bible or other religions, but my thing is just like, we had our own spirituality and our own religion way before the Bible got here. And so it's like, why have we just forgotten that? Like, why is that not its own lively thing here in Waitangi? So this is our second year of doing just karakia Māori here at Te Anō Maikuku. And the whakapapa of that is the Bible arrived here in the north in 1814 and was the first place that missionaries really started to establish themselves from overseas. And the first missionary to give a speech or a sermon, his name was Samuel Marsden, or Te Matinga, as he was his name was turned into He Ingoa Māori. And he delivered his first sermon in Oihi, which is a mission station not far from here. And there's a waiata about his sermon, and that's where I got this kōrero from. And it was a waiata written by Te Kemara, who also is a prominent rangatira of Ngāpuhi. But the one particular line of the waiata is Te Matinga or Marsden says, Kei te rangi te atua me te tiro koutou ki reira. God exists in the sky. I urge you all to look there. Ka huri te Matinga, ka te tiro hakararo. Then Matinga shifted his attention to the land. Ka riro te whenua, and the land was taken. And so that speaks to the honest truth around how the Bible, Christianity was used to take our land, and how missionaries were used basically as land agents by the Crown to distract and fool our people into believing that they had good hearts. And then, now we're close to not having any kind of genuine kind of physical connection to our whenua.
Dang. Far out, man. Just think about all of those experiences, and it's just so easy to get upset, get angry or get ready or get sad, because you just look at all of these ways that the Pākehā did to our people in many different ways. And so now we're looking at the results, and this is something that I shared in the video too, where there's a stereotype about Māori, and it's whether it's the wrong end of the spectrum of alcoholism, violence, gangs, all of those different things, that is the common perception that the other side have of Māori. But there's a reason as to why that is their way. That's the symptom of many generations of mamai and disconnection. And so it's just, it's great to be able to have this kōrero to share the deeper and deeper reasons of what's happened. And we can use the word colonization, but there seems to be a buzzword at times. But this is the reason why it's important to know these things, because we're looking at what we're going through at the moment. And this is the reason as to why it's not just what happened like yesterday or last year, bro. This is decades and centuries of what we've been going through as a people.
Yeah, 100%, bro. And just to follow that kōrero in terms of colonization is just one aspect of it. And colonization is kind of specific just to taking land, which is still like hugely important, but like taking our language, taking our spiritual practices, like those are also part of this bigger scheme. And I refer to it more as dehumanization. So it's like, because we're human in our own ways as Māori, according to our own kind of views of the world, and how we would live our lives freely as humans might be different to other cultures, but that's all good. That difference actually is what makes us beautiful. But it's that all of these things are ways of making us less human and actually making us non-human and reducing us down to what Kawiti, who was a prominent also rangatira of Ngāti Hine Ngāpuhi, referred to as Pōai Pākehā in one of the prophecies that he shared around the signing of, actually before he passed away, and urging and warning his people. He said, Ka Pōai Pākehā koutou a murine, you will all become Pākehā children. And in other words, you will be removed from your Māoritanga, and you'll become something else that you could never really genuinely be free as.
Oh, damn, bro. Yeah. Man, this is actually quite inspiring for me, and things that are coming up for me is, even when I look at you now, you're wearing your mataora, proudly, and I remember you saying like far out as soon as, and it's a common thing that happened with people who receive their moko kanohi is like there is no hiding anymore, and that's just part of their feeling of being free to be Māori, but there are all of these things, whether it's Kirino reo, maumoko, or other parts that connect you to that identity as Māori, bro, and being free in that. So, it's cool that you're sharing this kōrero, and I'm just getting these things pop up of, you as a person and how you tend to live, bro, because all of our kōrero is based around this, and you share that, bro. This is all every part of my life. Your mahi is in this, the way you live. And so how do you even break that down into a practical sense for someone who is just starting to become aware and knowing that it's important but feels so far away from it, or the pressure of doing these things might be a bit too much, or the weight of politics, all of these barriers that people put in front of themselves, and including myself, to actually find simple, practical ways to implement that aspect of being Māori and being proud, or even just, know what I'm getting at?
Yeah, no, 100%, Brian. Yeah, I've been on sort of both ends of the spectrum, if that makes sense. Like there was definitely a time in my life where there's no way I could have seen myself having any moko. And I wasn't like really that stoked about being Māori. It was something I kind of kept under wraps because, like, it just wasn't cool. And it wasn't convenient as well to like hard out kōrero Māori and be Māori and all of those things. And it was a source of shame at different points. And way on the other end of the spectrum now. And that's a journey, and it's man, picky, heke, but ultimately like has been, what's kind of allowed me to rehumanize myself and to almost have like, I feel like particularly in Te Tiriti my moko kanohi, like a rebirth, and a new becoming. And like, when I think about sort of what's led me to that from one end to the other, I think the biggest haukokiri or driver for me has been that critical consciousness around our history, our whakapapa, and learning that and all parts of it for what it is, like the good, but especially the bad, like the stuff that we're talking about in terms of how our language, land, and way of life has been taken, like not shying away from that, because there's this weird like tension that we feel like we're not even allowed to talk about our own trauma because they're like, oh, it's just these Maoris having a moan again. Yeah. It's like, and it's like we have to justify why we're talking about truths that affect our lives, and not just our lives today, but our parents, grandparents, and our babies. And so we're allowed to sit in and embrace those truths and be critical about them, and that's actually the way in which we can find our power. I often think about the kōrero of a great writer who was active in the civil rights movements for Black Americans around the same time as Martin Luther King. Like, his name was James Baldwin, and he said that when a victim can articulate and explain why they're a victim, they stop becoming a victim and they become a threat. And so my journey, bro, I think is like, I want all of us to experience that change, that transition, and become a threat. Wow. And become scary in terms of how we are, and be like, everyone walking moko kanohi and being like, yo, like, I love this shit. This is me. This is us. And I'm proud's not even the right word. It's just like, I'm here. Yeah. We're here, and that might sound whakahihi, but if you look at that in the background of not even that long ago being told that Māori is just fucking don't wear shoes, don't shower, are hories, and are always on the benefit, abusive to their kids, like all this narrative that we grew up with, Bro Town, bro. Remember that show? Jeff the Maori, always the butt of the joke. Like, we grew up with those stories being embedded in our head, and that's why there was a time when we were ashamed to be Māori. And so when you look at that whakahihi against the backdrop of that, it's like, bro, that's justice to me. That's tika, and that's pono.
That's tough, bro. So it actually started by knowing the truth or learning the truth.
100, bro.
Even when it hurt.
Even especially when it hurts, bro. Because that, and our pain is our power.
And our pain is our power. That's a natural driver, isn't it,
bro? It is, bro. It is.
Yeah, it's like, man, you can't be angry and not do anything about it, eh?
Yeah, exactly.
It almost like their power starts to, or their pain feeds the power to be like, oh, well, I'm not going to let this be what I live my life by. It's like, let me do something by it, by not just honoring yourself, but it's actually an honor to your tupuna and, to people who have gone through all of the hara to actually give us the opportunity to be able to do something with it. So exactly, I can see that progression there, bro. So that was mean. So, there are many touch points for many people, but, I think that fundamental kōrero there around just leaning into the truth, even if it hurts, and just allow that to foster and use that towards, I don't know, going to a real Māori class, or starting to look at, what you could give meaning to a moko, or looking into whakapapa, or just reconnecting to whenua. And so the more we can just look into these things, it can help us actually start with small steps. And as you say, if you've been on this step, bro, people who just met you for the first time, they think that you would always be here. And I thought that for a long time, and so getting to know more of your story is actually quite inspiring for people who are on that huarahi. And so thinking about, coming back to that part I started was around like, coming towards the end of the term. We've seen quite obviously the attack on Te Ao Māori, and it's come at many different levels. And it's pretty interesting to know that we are coming towards the end of the term, and also with a lot of disruption with what's happening politically for even Te Pāti Māori and things that have happened, transpired over these past few months. And so can you have a bit of time to kōrero about what this term has looked like for you and what you've been experiencing, and what led, I guess, to you having that kōrero and speaking out about your observations and experiences within Te Pāti Māori?
Yeah, bro. So probably like at a more broad level in terms of governments, like this current government is, relatively speaking, probably the most proud kind of colonizing government that there's ever been, right? The loudest about it, and they've just been baring their teeth really, like, and have not held back, have not been even shy about it in terms of their agenda to shit all over Te Tiriti o Waitangi and the rights of tangata whenua. But in saying that, no government has ever truly honoured Te Tiriti o Waitangi. They've kind of just been less loud about it. But this government in particular has been, a source of rage for a lot of us because of how, I guess, bullish they've been around just not giving a single care about Te Tiriti, our rights, our presence, and I guess our mana. And so there have been a lot of kind of attacks specifically in terms of like policy and laws on a lot of progress that's been made over the years, even before my time. And I think that sort of added to the rage as well, which I get, like, that makes sense. And in saying that, what might be kind of like I don't want to say a good thing, but one opportunity there is that, like, okay, wow, people can see now just how evil governments can be. And so maybe in that rage, in that pain even, we can find the power to mobilize, right, and to vote and to change the government. The kind of other side of that tautohe is like, I wouldn't want our people to think that a new government is suddenly going to fix all of our problems and be our ultimate savior, right? Because I don't think any government is going to be the savior of Te Māori. It's the people. It's our communities. Because the government as it exists today was never actually meant to exist according to Te Tiriti. It was never meant to be a government that governs Māori lives or Māori communities.
True.
So it's like at the core of it, e he ana. It's literally built on hara. It's built on lies, and injustice, control, and tika, and so that's kind of a broader way of seeing it. So it's important to change this government, but it's important to remember that we are the only ones who can be rangatira of our lives, right? And we should be keeping our consciousness there while still kind of protecting ourselves from the damage of governments today, which is the important thing about voting and all of it, especially for whānau who are like already struggling and now they can't find a place to live, can't get a job.
Cost of living.
It's just so
paying
much just
more
for
just
feed.
to live.
Exactly, bro. All of that's important. We've got to show up for that in this way of voting.
And it's quite buzzy how, cost of living has a trickle effect to a state of a person or a whānau.
Yes, brother.
Like if you're struggling just to feed your family, man, it changes the way you behave and your mannerisms, because that pressure and that stress is just so difficult to be able to handle, and if you're thinking about the oranga of your babies or even just for yourself for survival, cost of living is just one of those things that has been quite dramatic over these past few years, going in and you've just got like a few things in your shopping basket and all of a sudden it's triple digits. It's like, how the hell did that even happen, bro? And so it's just those kinds of things. And, if you've got a whānau and you've already, struggling and then this happens, it's actually quite devastating and sad to know that some whānau are impacted by that. And so, just carry on. I just thought I'd just drop in on that, brother.
Yeah, tika. And that's that, thinking about those whānau. Because if we're feeling the pressure, bro, then imagine the like whānau that are already in sort of overcrowded homes, already living out of their cars, like, and that's the reality for a lot of whānau, particularly here in the north and across Aotearoa, I'm sure. And that's the reason why, like, me and my whānau ever gotten involved in politics, was to show up for those whānau. Like my mum she's worked in iwi social services for as long as I can remember, and has done social work basically like most of her life. And so that's kind of our driver to ever be involved in politics is to achieve or at least strive towards that end in terms of protecting and showing up for whānau who need it the most. And I've realised that political parties, even if they are Te Pāti Māori, will say that they want that as well. But then, and internally, when you listen to different conversations, you start to realise they're just part of the game like everyone else. And that this is the thing we have to realise about political parties is, like, to be honest, none of them can be trusted because their whole, like, it's a job for them, right?
Yeah.
And so they, and all parties, all they want to do is maintain power and maintain popularity. And the best way...
Because does that mean they stay in and get more money?
They just stay in and stay in power and never stop getting money, right? Because that's their way of, like, I guess, well, there's the money side of it. I'd say there's probably bigger ways to make money. I'm not really schooled up in that world, but they definitely want power. And there's a particular type of, I think, for the most part, people who are attracted to those positions want power and have massive egos as well. And I'm really starting to learn that. And so how I see it is that for a political party to keep doing what they're doing and to stay in power is actually to not do that much at all. Because, like, there's the political spectrum, and this is the science that Pākehā political scientists like use, right? Is that they have this thing called the political spectrum. On one side is the left wing, and apparently, according to them, the left wing is like they're more into social politics and like providing benefits and providing for possibly people that are struggling a little bit more, the environment, more about people, supposedly, so they say. The right wing is purely about capital, about money, right? Economics. And economics, exploiting, extorting as much as possible, not giving a shit about the environment, really. If it means it's going to cost more, they don't care, right? And so that's a world driven by money and individuals. Supposedly, the left wing is driven more by principles and social people-driven policies. Now, pretty much most political parties, I don't actually think exist on either of those. Most of them kind of sit in the middle because society kind of is, for the most part, like, people's views aren't necessarily on the extreme of either. Most people kind of sit in the middle. And that's just because talking about political stuff, I don't know, isn't that normal, right? So if you kind of go too far one end or too far the other, you're going to lose a lot of votes. So that's why National and Labour, they kind of just sit in that middle bit, and they say that they're left wing and right wing, but actually they're what I would call centre parties, middle parties, and they just want to maintain power. So they don't want to go too far one way or too far the other, because then they'll get booted, right? They'll lose their jobs. And that's like the norm, right? That's the norm, and it's a world that feeds into that, into maintaining power, cutting deals, and it's actually both sides are driven by money. Right? All parties are driven by money and not mana, and that's probably the one thing that I saw, and I also saw in my kind of when I was doing work and then with Te Pāti Māori, I just saw dishonesty. Like, I saw things being said to the public, and then sitting in meetings and like things being said that contradicted what was being said to the public, and a lot of it was just yuck. It was yuck stuff, bro. Like, it was just like, ooh, like, why would you say that? And not like they'd say all this stuff, like milk all the stuff around being the only Pāti Māori. We're the only ones that do tikanga Māori. We're the only ones that do haka and waiata, te mea, and then get into a hui, bro, and they didn't even do karakia sometimes. And it's like, oh, yeah, like, what's going on here? Or it's just like, even just the way of communicating, the way of being, not seeing people for who they are, not listening. And it was really just individual driven, bro. It was like, if you're not on this waka, then get off. And I was like, bro, this isn't Māori. This isn't like a Māori way of being. This isn't rangatira, like what we talked about before in terms of weaving people together. That's not what I felt at all at any point. Like, kind of from the start, but I just kind of was like, oh, maybe it'll get better, hoping it would get better. And then there were just specific incidences, and there are certain whānau, and I won't talk about what they went through because that's their kōrero to speak about. My whānau sort of to some degree, but other whānaus over the years had been burned by this hidden, toxic system of governance in Te Pāti Māori. And I was like, bro, enough is enough. Like, I don't want to be lying. Because if I was going to stay silent, I was lying just like they were. And I was like, nah, F that. And so I used my platform to speak truth like I always do. I didn't see it as being different. I didn't see it as like, oh, I should give them a free pass because they're Te Pāti Māori. In fact, like, because they're Te Pāti Māori, we need to be more like, we need to force integrity and accountability even more. I definitely like, in reflection, like there are some things that I think, well, I didn't really see coming out afterwards. Like it's definitely gotten quite messy.
Yeah.
And I definitely see and understand the kind of maybe, not confusion, but just uncertainty maybe that it's created. Well, that it likely has created for a lot of our whānau. But I stand by what I did and why I did it. And I still believe that there's hope to recreate, rebuild, and launch, I guess, into a kind of new norm of being genuinely Māori, not just on the face of it.
And do you feel that can only happen with new leadership? Is there like the kōrero that feels what would create that rebuild, or would that help to re-establish trust?
It would, if the new leadership is the right leadership, if that makes sense. Right? If it was replacing the same with the same, then no, those same issues would be there. And mate, I think also the leadership point in terms of the people who are filling the positions is one part of it, but there's a way bigger story to it in Te Ao Māori in so many spaces, not just political parties, to like recalibrate who we are and our norms. Because there's like Te Pāti Māori is the stuff I've seen.
Yeah.
But there's so much bullshit like that happens, bro. Not just, there's like marae trusts. Yeah. There's like PSGEs, like governance entities for different iwi. There's like even just the taumata, bro. Like how we allow fucking abusers to speak on the taumata. Like we just have this norm that's like makes bullshit okay. And that's the bigger thing we need to address, because we could change leadership all day long, but if we're not having those tough ass conversations, bro, like we're going to get nowhere. And it's also, I find it hilarious because it's like, it's easy calling out a racist government because they're like right there, easy as they're attacking you, they're loud. But what's hard is addressing the bullshit in our own whare. And so that's the bigger picture, bro. And that's always been kind of top of mind for me in this particular kind of form of advocacy that I've been holding. Yeah.
Man, because it was quite I wouldn't call it a shock, but it was, when it did come out, I was like, oh, what's this? You know, so it created a lot of curiosity, maybe like that bit of uncertainty, and even just the interest in being like, okay, so what's the bro talking about here, and like what's coming out, and or what's the response going to be? And, you know, so there were heaps of things that were coming out, heaps of articles, and it was a rabbit hole essentially around like, man, because, you know, for the general public, we're looking at, you know, you all, and it was, well, in my mind, I'll speak for myself, it was like, man, there's this unity happening at a top level. But really, there were things happening in the background, and I just found it pretty courageous, bro, of you. And I gave you the message to, you know, let you know. I was like, man, you know, it must take some balls and guts to be able to know what you're going to talk about and the potential of what it could lead to. And so did you have any kind of like regrets after it, bro? Or did you have any other kōrero in hindsight that perhaps, you know, as you reflect on that time?
Definitely lots of learnings, bro. Heaps of learnings, which I'm like, pressure is a privilege and kind of pain is a privilege at times too, right? And so there's definitely been some like tensions and some tough kind of moments, yucky moments, but a lot of learnings through those. And the core of what I did, I don't regret, but there's definitely things in hindsight. If I was to ever do this all again, which I hope I never would, I would probably do slightly differently or be a little bit more prepared for, or have a bit more of a plan for. Yeah.
Because did you just go in there, I'm just going to say this, and you didn't really know what was going to transpire from that?
I didn't, bro, because I just acted straight from the ngākau, spoke from the ngākau, my puku. And that's actually one of the things I love about myself. Is that, you know, like that's who I am, bro. I always have been that. And I also have to realize that, bro, a lot of people look at you I can't even go to Pack and Save now without an auntie wanting to take a photo with me. So it's like, okay, bro, you can't like underestimate that anymore. Because I don't know, bro, I just never really like Instagram followers might be one thing, but it's like you never really know who's behind that phone or who's watching or who's listening. And I've started to realize, oh heck, there's more people than I kind of thought. And that's a learning, right? That's a learning for me to be like, okay, bro, like when you say stuff, like a lot of people are gonna hear it and see it, and there are a lot of people out there that trust you and trust your, for some reason, trust your ahua and your leadership, and so it's like that's a responsibility, and that's something I have to continue to be accountable to, but still be an advocate for truth and still have those hard conversations and force those hard conversations when needed, and that's will be sort of a constant balancing act for me, even more so now given this situation, to be like, oh, okay, that's a real thing.
Because you want to honor like who you are, like those aspects of yourself that, you know, just acts on that intuition, and which is always going to be, I feel anyway, is if you're aligned to it, it's always going to be an appropriate action to take if you follow that. The longer you leave it, bro, it actually creates inner turmoil. It actually creates things that like you go through things if you're not honoring that part that you know needs to be done. And so, you know, so I get that, but then now you've got this experience of lived experience of going through something that now you have a way to create boundaries or systems to honor the responsibility that comes with that kind of action. That's it, bro.
And being a lot more just aware of that. And bro, that inner turmoil thing was real. Like there were people may think that I just came out, like I had the thought and then the next day I kind of did it, but something I sat with for months, bro. And like there were so many sleepless nights, bro. I just couldn't even live with myself, bro. I was just like, man, I'm seeing this. And that's happening on the inside, and I'm seeing all the stuff that's happening on the outside, and I'm just sitting there and I'm just letting it be okay. I'm giving permission to it, and I just was like beating myself up for ages about it. And I don't want to make it about me because it's not like a selfish Eru thing, but it's like I didn't want to lead our whānau down the garden path and like fool them into thinking that everything was all good when I know for a fact it ain't. So it was that's where the tension was. And at the same time, like, there's no book on how to hold a political party, Māori party to account with a step-by-step guide on like what's going to be effective, what's not. Like this is completely new territory and new ground for me, and it's not a normal act, right? For most. So I don't know, maybe I'll write that book one day and as a memoir, but like, so it's like kind of shooting into the wind, but
Bro, find your way eventually. But you know, the thing that, you know, was coming up as you were having that kōrero was like when you came out about it, there, as I said before, there was this, you know, perception of, you know, being united. And, you know, if there was just a person down the road who kind of said what you said, it wouldn't have landed, bro. Like it wouldn't have had as much impact, you know, because of, I guess, your role with Te Pāti Māori over the years and over time, and your and how invested you were, and how everyone else was able to be drawn to, you know, your kōrero at activations on the hikoi. And so there was all of these things that I guess made that as big as what it was. But following on from there, bro, has there been anything that has surprised you about either a response from, you know, Rawiri or the accountability aspect of things, or, you know, what was anything surprising in what happened after?
I wouldn't say surprising, bro, because I just know how they think and act, but a lot of it was confusing. Like the initial kind of reactions were weirdly positive, and then they just started assassinating my character and really going for me and just publishing lies about me. And they've done nothing to sort of refute those or to apologize for those. Just blatant
even though they were
lies.
Proven wrong.
Yeah, exactly, right, exactly. And like things that I've directly addressed and be like, no, that's bullshit. But they curated this whole story about me to attack me and attack my character, which like I don't actually really care about that, like because it's not shit about me. But what has pissed me off the most about this sort of comms is like they're talking to our people like they're stupid. Like we're not critical thinkers, like we're dumb and we're just going to believe all the shit they say. And it's just straight up gaslighting, bro. And it's mud. And
it's unfortunate that that's even, because when you have a little think about any kind of narrative,
Yeah.
and the media do it well. They create a narrative, and if you can get the masses to believe it, it almost like shuts things out so that, you can carry on with things. So for that to happen and for it to be actually seen, because that's what I guess a lot of people who were in the same seat as me, they saw that happen, but it was almost like there was it became visible.
Yeah.
Like you saw it all sort of in motion, like as it was happening. Like, so it was just like quite a, it was quite an interesting thing, and still processing through it all,
Yeah, bro. And like even yesterday, that was confusing.
Yeah.
Like Rawiri was sort of half apologizing, and I was thinking, oh, maybe there is a sliver of hope here. And then Kitty comes out and does this like haka thing, which cuts right across what he said. And I was thinking, oh, wow, now I'm confused. Like, where are we at? Did you fellas have a hui before this? Because it doesn't look like you guys are aligning in terms of what you're trying to communicate. But like, if I step back and try and remove myself from it, it's just silly, bro. It's silly, and it's like they need to remember how they got into the positions they got into. The people voted them there. Te Tai Tokerau voted them in there, right?
Yep.
That's Rohe, along with most of the others, voted them in there. And like, from a strategic standpoint, like I'm not trying to get votes for anything. Like I'm not trying to get voted into anything or an election or whatever. But they seem like they are. So wouldn't it make sense for them to come to the people as opposed to make the people come to them? And that's the core of why their leadership is so toxic. Whakahihi. And they think they're entitled, I believe. They think that they're entitled to the belief of the people, like they don't got to work for it. And that's when I reckon leadership becomes toxic and unhealthy and non-Māori, because te rangatira, ko tāna he hono i te tangata ki te tangata. So like, I don't even have any really personal beef about it. Right, like at this point, I'm at peace with a lot of it. I'm not letting that like really affect my ngākau. But I'm just like, this is just silly at this point. And if they really care about the kaupapa, they'll make some massive changes to save it, or they'll sink with it. And sad if they do, because their kaupapa has been around for a lot longer than they have in terms of like actually being involved in it. And they need to respect the legacy of it, which they didn't create.
Because you had your kōrero was more around, again, accountability, and it wasn't just towards the current government, but you went across the board, you went also to Te Pāti Māori and then even to Greens, and so it was more so like you laid down the whakaaro around, this is what the people are wanting, like who's gonna pick it up, but more importantly, who's gonna listen. And so, like, can you talk us through that process, bro, around, like what that was for you and where it came from, but then also, what were some of the responses that, because your main kōrero was like, man, why are we even inviting people in that kind of way? But then also, because the main kōrero is they say something over here and then do something else over here. So, with that in mind, like, how do you go about things in those kinds of ways?
Yeah, my main whakaaro yesterday, when I actually looked like I was going to get an opportunity to speak, I was like, yeah, everyone's getting the smoke today, because everyone deserves the smoke. And we and if we were ever to kind of invite them to speak, I don't know, I was because we've been on the front lines opposing that very pōheri over the years. And this year, ironically, I was asked to speak, and then I thought, okay, this might be a bit of a tuki, but if I'm going to speak, I'm going to give it to them. I'm not going to stand there and lick their boots. Like, no way. And so that's what I did yesterday. And my, I feel like the fair way of doing it was to not let anyone off the hook, because everyone has their paru and their kino to be accountable to. And that's the job of an advocate, or me as a political advocate, to speak that into reality. And so the iwi can hear it and feel it, hopefully. Yeah.
Wow, awesome, brother. Yeah, and even having Kiri come up, doing a manawa wera, and, and because their main kōrero is around, not leaving it on social media or anything like that. So in her way, it was like, oh, well, I'm leaving my riri for the ātea, and so te whare o tū, and so what were you kind of like thinking in that moment as she was like approaching you, bro? Because, that's been quite a bit of a thing as I'm going on my newsfeed. Like heaps of bloody different angles of it and kōrero. So like, what was your like in the seat kind of like process of that?
When it first started, I was just sort of processing it and kind of thinking to myself, oh man, what's happening right now, kind of looking around. And then I was thinking like, oh, is this like I first thought maybe she's giving like a bit of a koha to the taumata maybe, and then it was started to angle more towards me, and I thought, oh, and then I kind of realised, e mana wawera ana, I guess, and pai tikanga Māori tērā, and everyone has their own way of, I guess, processing and expressing. Yeah, and I would never kind of try and dictate that as well. Pai ana. The only kind of thing again that confused me was that literally about a minute before that, Rawiri has said, me kaua tātou e whawhai ki a tātou. E te tikanga te mana wawera, he tikanga tū tērā, he tikanga whawhai tērā. And so I was like, oh man, that's just cut right across what he said.
True.
And the kind of sentiment of the kōrero.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, also it's like, oh, you come on as a manuhiri on the crown pōhiri, and then you're doing a wero to the haukainga. Like, I was like, oh, which like, even though probably in her mind, and I can't speak for her, but it seemed like in her mind it was pointed towards me, but I don't exist on my own. I was literally surrounded by hundreds of my own people, and the attack on me in that way was an attack on my people. And I don't know if she registered the impact of that, and they're going to have to wear that, because the little chance there was of reviving Te Pāti Māori here in Te Tai Tokerau, it's gone now because of what she did. And they're going to have to wear that. And yeah, it's a bit like, oh, yeah. Like, hea hau e nā tika, hea e nā whakaro, hea te māramatanga, I roto, i e nā whakaro. And like, every relation I've seen since, Kazi, you all right? Kazi, you all right? And, you know, and especially my aunties, I can't even share what they've been saying to me on here, but they're lily. And they're righteously angry about that attack more than I am, because I'm not even really beefing about them. Oh, okay, well, tērā. But they are righteously angry on my behalf, and as they have a right to be. And so, yeah, I'm just like, oh, well, ka pāte utu ātea.
Yeah, wow, bro. Wow, interesting. As we talk about aunties, bro, there was a part after your kōrero where you guys did a waiata around the red blankets, ngā parai ki te whiro, bro. Like, what's the history of that? You know, because I was really listening to the waiata and I knew that there's some significance to it, but man, it's just like the memory of what I've been told about it is not there. But can you share quickly around like what that is, bro?
Yeah,
like,
bro,
you know, around the significance of that.
Yeah, and that's full circle actually to that rārangi I was talking about before in terms of titiro ki te rangi, kāriro te whenua. So another rārangi in that same waiata is taiapa rawa mai ki taiapa rawa mai, literally fencing off the whenua ki te pārua rino with iron fences, ki te pātiti, and again like fencing. And so that was the Crown's way of literally cutting up the whenua, off the whenua. And then ko te prai ki te whiro nāu i te kāwana, your red blanket governor, was like the means of recognizing these land purchases. So literally,
they would give them blankets.
Yeah.
Wow.
For whenua.
For whenua.
Yeah. So that's the depth, the significance of the red blanket, and that it's a literal physical manifestation of our pain and the theft of our whenua. And that's what my aunties and whangaroa in particular are known for. And my whangaroa connection is also through my grandmother, my mum's mum. And there's a wahine o whangaroa. You don't want to mess with them. You know, they're of that ahua, just toa. And that's how they express their dedication to the kaupapa, is through te pai ki te whiro. So when my auntie Frances from Whangaroa, when we had our hui in the whaere beforehand, expressed her kind of aspiration for that to be seen, I said to her, oh, auntie, ka pai, I'll speak about it. And then haere mai ki te waiata. And yeah, I felt so safe with them there too. And I felt, honoured just to be able to stand side by side with my aunties.
Right. And even again, it's coming back full circle from the beginning. It's just like that power in the pain.
Yes, but
you know, like, man, there's a strength in being like, man, these red blankets are significant and hold a lot of mamai. But here, I'm going to show you, I'm wearing it. You know, like, oh, dang, bro, symbolic.
Yeah,
symbolic.
Bro, and during the kind of initial, and just I've heard these stories, I was too young actually at that time, but when the first ngāpui hearings were happening, and these were the hearings that eventually created the report confirming that Ngāpuhi never ceded sovereignty to the Crown. During those hearings, there was a lot of history shared, a lot of mamae shared, and the way in which so I've heard our kuia kind of, I guess, practice their own sort of therapy through that was literally weaving blankets during the hearings.
Wow.
And a lot of those blankets were the ones that we saw yesterday.
Yeah, dang.
Yeah.
Buzzy, man. Ngāpuhi, eh? Lastly, bro, we've been going for a little while here.
Cheer,
and,
fella.
thank you for the kōrero so far.
All good.
Be great just to, I suppose, end this kōrero with just a segue into, well, what do we do as a people now? Like if we are uncertain and, there's a lot of fractures that are out there. And so, like, what do you think people can do to land and, I guess, be grounded at this time of voting? Because, not to say like, you should do this, but like, what are some things that we need to think about as people around where do we put this vote? Like, what can we trust or like, what can we do to actually get more clear about that?
Yeah, paitela, bro. I think my kind of personal take on it in terms of how I'll be voting, maybe this is helpful, hopefully, but I think most importantly for us, because we're, especially with Māori seats, if you're enrolled to vote in Māori seats, but any sort of electorate, I think, but first and foremost, focus on the person, the person running in the seat. If you believe in that person, vote for that person. And if you believe in their sort of ngākau, their principles, person first, party later. That's the other thing as well. You don't have to give your party vote. You can just vote for a person.
Vote for a person.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
So, but just do your kind of thinking about that now, because there are some announcements happening now in terms of people that are running in certain seats. And so think about your electorate, look at those options and just think about the person.
And what do you mean by you don't have to think about the party? Does that automatically go to the person you voted if you don't do that, or you just don't?
No, it doesn't. So you get 2 votes.
Yeah.
You get 1 vote for the person running in your area and you get 1 vote for a party. Now, if you vote for that person and they're in this party, it doesn't mean they automatically get that party vote. You can give that to any party, or you could not give it to, give it to no party if you wanted. So I'd focus on people for now, and there are a lot of people, sort of rising, which is mean, and really good candidates too. So think about the people, party later, and the party decision would be a better one to make closer to election, I think. But start measuring the people. Start measuring the people now, and then when you get closer to November, look at sort of the party landscape and see generally where the principles align and who's actually walking the talk. Yeah, that would be my advice, bro.
Mean. And so just to break that down one more time. So you get 2 votes.
Yep.
1 goes to a person and then 1 goes to a party. Yep. Now, if this person gets the majority of the votes in that region, do they automatically get a seat in their party in Parliament?
That's right, bro.
And then the party vote you give to whoever gets the most in this, they become government. Is that right or no?
The government depends on who can get the most seats, and that's usually by parties grouping together. So the government decision actually happens in the months after the election.
Right.
So let's say like one party, because there's 120 in total in Parliament. So if one party gets 40 seats and another party gets 21 seats, then they've got a majority and they can become government together. So you can usually always have to be more than one party in government. So it would be hard. It's happened before, but it's really hard for one party to have enough to be government on its own. So that's a later thing. So then that's why we have to think strategically. It's like, okay, how you can, that's where split voting can be helpful. Split voting is like when you go, vote for this person from this party, but then vote for a different party here. Because then you can maximize, they're going to get in. You might think, the Kazi's in that party, but they're going to get in off the list, right? Because that party vote is what allows you to pull people off your list. And the electorate or person vote is like, if you win that seat, you're in. You don't, the list doesn't matter at that point. If you've won the electorate seat, the place. And so you got to think strategically around, well, the Kazi's pretty low on the list here, so I'll give the Kazi my person vote because also they're really good at their job. And then the Kazi's in that party, so maybe I'll support that party so then they can get in there. And it doesn't not even have to be the Kazi, like it might be just someone that you really believe in.
Cool.
And so, even though the kind of party vote, it's less to do with the person, it can still kind of play play a role. But there are so many different parts to it, and this is why it can be kind of discouraging. Because it can be confusing. And lists don't get published for a little while as well. But yeah, my thing for now is just look at the people running in your area and just measure them and be like, oh yeah, are they the person that I would believe in to do and show up for my rohe specifically? Yeah.
Man, that's a good way of breaking it down, bro. Because coming back again is the right action to do is an informed one.
Always.
So to know what you're actually up to is like actually the first step to doing what you know you need to do. So when I'm thinking about the majority of people who aren't voters, but the great thing that has happened over the years is with all of the activations and mobilizations, there's been a lot more people enrolling. And so it's really good to take that first step. But now it's this next one around like, okay, now what do we do with our vote? And so it's important for us as a people to come together, to be critical, to measure, but to also just trust in our own vote, because that's mana.
Yeah.
And that is mana in that. So, bro, I could honestly Rogan this and just talk for hours with you. There's so many other different spin-offs we could go to. But just want to thank you, bro, for your time, for your courage, for your reo, and for being, just someone who's true to himself and what you represent. So, i runga i tērā, bro, mihi nui ana kia koe, just going to pass it over to you, bro. Kia whakakapi tō tātou nei kōrero. Tō tāua nei kōrero, I should say.
E mihi ana, brother. E mihi ana i te pōhiri te o kukiroto ki tēnei. Whare kōrero, whare wānanga, kua mauwhiwhia, kua maurawea. Ano reira, tui a ngā kōrero, kia u, kia mau. Haka maua kia tīna.
Tīna.
Kui e.
Tai ki e. Tēnā koe, brother.
Che mai,